went and got yourself a law degree. Congratulations, and welcome to the Happy Lawyer Project. I'm your host, Akoma Moronu, and I created this show to teach lawyers how to work in their gift and live their passions. Together with my guest, we provide the knowledge, insight, skills, inspiration, and encouragement you need to find your happy. Today I chat with Heather Hubbard, the founder of the Language of Joy. Heather has been featured in Super Lawyers, Best Lawyers in America, Managing Intellectual Property Stars, and Benchmark Litigation. She was also honored by the Nashville Business Journal as one of Nashville's 40 Under 40. And after over 10 years of practice, Heather left partnership to pursue her passion of helping other professionals live more joyful, purpose-driven, peaceful, and abundant lives. I'm thrilled to welcome Heather to the show. Welcome, Heather. I am so excited to have you join us on the show today.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Great. So I'd love to start the show if you could just give us a brief description of your journey in the law and how you got to be where you are today.
Okay. Well, we're going to go all the way back to the beginning. When I was in the third grade.
I was wondering how far you were going to go. I was wondering if you were going to talk about the hospital you were born in, but third grade. Okay.
We're going to go pretty far back. So when I was in the third grade, our teacher had us do this exercise about what we were going to be the first of. So it was like walking on the moon. We all traced our foot. And I said, I'm going to be the first woman president. And so I go home and I ask my dad, what do I need to do to accomplish this? And he was very serious. And he said, well, you should probably become an attorney. And I said, great. And so I literally asked for a briefcase for Christmas and started my legal journey and never, ever took my eyes off the prize since that time. So unlike a lot of people, I very much knew that I wanted to be an attorney. And so that was always the goal. I went to the University of Louisville for undergrad. I got a double major in history and political science, which I thought was exactly what I should do. I then went to Vanderbilt Law School and focused at that time, I just get really laser focused and determined that I was going to practice entertainment and intellectual property law. And so that's what I focused my classes on. I started attending bar association meetings and getting really involved in that area of the law. And indeed, that's what I did I guess I've been practicing now for about 12 years. And the entire time, I was practicing entertainment IP litigation. I started with more of a boutique firm for about 2 years, and then I lateraled over to an AmLaw 200 firm, one of the largest in Nashville, and really just I've always been super focused on my career, and there I became partner. I became the deputy practice group leader of the litigation group and was very involved, I guess, and you could say the politics or management of the firm, and then decided 2 years ago, I left October 23rd, so almost 2 years to the date of us recording this podcast. I decided to start my own coaching and consulting company. And so although I practice a little bit of law on the side, I have mostly hung up that hat. So I think that gets you from the very beginning to now.
That's an amazing story. I want to dig deeper into that story. How are you making those decisions along the way? Like in law school, how did you decide you were really into entertainment and IP law?
Well, I think, so part of that is I've always been focused on where my passions are. So, even at the third grade when I was saying I wanted to be the first female president, that was because I was actually interested in politics and history. And the other side of that coin is I've always been super into music and theater. And so if I wasn't going to be a lawyer, I would have been probably singing on a stage on a cruise ship. So it just made sense for me. I know, right? So it just made sense for me to combine the two. And yeah, I've always had a sense of following my passions, and I didn't really let logic or other people dissuade me.
I think that's so unique for a lawyer. I don't hear that often. And I talk to a lot of lawyers these days. I think a lot of people have to come to that eventually.
Yeah.
But they definitely make make decisions from a place of logic and what they think they should be doing and what makes the most sense, and not necessarily taking into consideration at all what they would enjoy doing.
Right.
which I think is a part of the problem. So how did you make the final decision to kind of move away from practicing towards this new area of your career?
Well, I mean, it was a process, and it wasn't very linear. It's hard for me to even identify when I started making the decision until the time it was made. I knew that I was getting a little bit bored with the practice of law, and that I felt like I was starting to, I guess, just see the same types of cases come up over and over again. And certainly, I didn't have it mastered. There's always something new to learn, but it was just a little bit boring. But I was super passionate about, one, female retention and diversity within law firms. And I loved the coaching and, I guess, management consulting piece of things. When I got into management, I was naturally in this role of helping others and coaching others. I never had any idea that that's where my journey would take me. But as I was doing it, I realized I really, really enjoyed it. And so it was a slow process of exploring different opportunities and alternatives. And then I just decided I was going to go for it. It's really hard to explain. I just decided to jump off the cliff one day.
I think that that's right. I love that, because I think that if you are moving in the direction that you're being pulled, as opposed to moving from the thing from which you're being pushed,
right,
you can't go wrong. And I think often people feel like they're getting pushed out of the law because they find it boring, or they can't handle the stress, but they don't know where they're going. They just know where they're running away from. And so then they still end up unhappy. So I love that in your story, you really felt pulled towards this direction of mentoring and consulting, and that you found a way to do it in the legal space and give back to the community still.
Right. No, I 100% agree with what you're saying. I do find that a lot of times when people feel forced to make another decision, they end up taking the same issues with them. So it's a new environment, maybe a different client, whether you're going in-house or to another firm or even going to the government. But if you're not dealing with those core underlying issues of what made you unhappy to begin with, you really just, you don't find the satisfaction that you're looking for. You just get, a change of scenery.
Definitely. And I think if you are making decisions from a place of fear and
yes,
as opposed to a place of clarity,
yes,
it's always going to be hard to make the right decision, because everything kind of feels like the wrong decision, because you're just kind of running around in the dark. So I always am trying to advocate for people to try to figure out how you can be happy where you are. Because if you can suck as much happiness out of the current position that you're in, then your next leap will be made from a place of confidence, or made with confidence. And so I love that you agree.
Absolutely. Well, and so I actually spent a lot of time I would say for the last year and a half, I actually was trying to figure out, could I make this work? Could I be happier in my situation? And the good news is I was able to do that, but I was still being pulled in the other direction. Mm-hmm. That said, I am certain that if I stayed in the firm and did not have that entrepreneurial passion to go out on my own, I would have been so much happier and would have continued that process compared to when I really felt stuck and didn't have a lot of options.
Mm-hmm. And do you have any tips for attorneys, I guess, who are in that place where they're kind of on the brink of burnout, and they feel like when you say, how do you be happy where you are, they're just like, I can't even breathe. You know what I mean? Like, I'm suffocating in my life. What do you think are first steps to give yourself some breathing room?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is to really watch and become aware of your mindset. It's easier said than done, but I think there's a tendency in the law, partly because of how we're trained and the work that we do, to be really negative and critical all the time. And so, we're always looking out for what's the worst thing that's going to happen, what can go wrong. And when we get into that cycle of feeling, suffocated and only seeing all of the bad around us, it makes it worse. And there's, quite frankly, nothing you can do to feel better if you're not willing to say, you know what, I want to change my perspective. I want to see this differently. I want to feel different. Something has to change. And that really has to start with your mindset. And I know that can be really difficult to hear because oftentimes we feel like, it's all of these outside circumstances. But if you can say, I want to look at this differently and start to just be open and catch yourself when you are complaining, catch yourself when you are gossiping, and just trying to stop. That creates what I call breathing room. It creates space to start seeing things in a new light. And that will give you so much room to then start making those changes within your own firm or your, in-house job, wherever you are, or starting to see where you want to go. Because when you are truly stuck and negative, it's hard to see any options inside or outside your current situation.
100%. I personally had the same kind of feeling stuck, feeling unhappy. And for me, I did a year-long gratitude practice. And that was really eye-opening to start. I started and ended every day. I was working in New York at the time. And so when I got on the subway and when I left work, I would text my husband one thing that I was grateful for.
I love it.
And that also, texting it to him was like an easy way to do it. And it kept me accountable. And the kind of cool thing is now we also have all these texts. And it's kind of nice to go back and see a year ago, he put them together for me. And they're a nice little journal that I didn't mean to keep.
Right. That's awesome.
And that was a huge mindset shift for me. And I couldn't have done it, I think, more quickly, because sometimes people want a quick fix, but it took me a really long time to get to the point where I could see challenges as opportunities, where I could see things that criticism as outside of my control and not a judgment of my worth. When you get a bad review from a partner, that just means you didn't do what they wanted you to do. That doesn't mean you're a bad lawyer. That doesn't mean that they don't like you. There's all these things you attach to criticism, and to kind of release myself from that. And it really took a year for me personally to get over that. Mm-hmm. I would love to transition a little now, because I know you talk a little about flowing in your career and in life. And I know that's in the entrepreneurial space, in the personal development space, that's a very popular term right now. And that's kind of a buzzword. But I'd love to know how you think it applies to the practice of law.
Yeah. So as you know, my mantra is hustle and flow. For the majority of my life, it was hustle, period. Flow really didn't come into play until maybe the last 4 years. And so I was always, and I think a lot of lawyers are like this. I don't know if it's nature versus nurture, right? I don't know if we go to law school because we're already pre-wired or if law school teaches us to be this way, but we tend to be high achievers. We tend to get validation from, our accomplishments and our titles and our net worth. And so it just sets us up to constantly be focused on work all the time. It's the grind, it's the hustle. And quite frankly, we're really good at it. And so, we continue down that path. I did not have any concept of flow. If I'm being honest, I probably thought that would have been a weakness. It was some type of laziness. But I had, it was kind of a perfect storm in the sense that I had a lot of things happen in a single year. My entire life seemed to be falling apart. From the outside, you wouldn't have known that, but there was just a lot of personal things going on, and I had to get a grip. And the way that I started doing that was following meditation and mindfulness, and it completely changed my life. For those people that know me well, there was this transition where people started asking, what has changed? What has happened? Because you are so much more peaceful and relaxed. And I really never would have expected to be that person because I am so, just hard driving. But without the flow piece, it's really just, being able to take a step back and relax, being able to take a step back and say, okay, I can't control this situation and I can continue to be stressed and anxious and tense, or I can take a step back, take a deep breath and say, there's nothing I can do about that in this moment. And I'm okay. In this moment, I'm okay. In this moment, nothing is going wrong. And so I'm just going to be present with that. And that's really what being in the flow means to me. And I did start practicing that when I was in the practice of law. And I think that can show up in many different ways. For me, meditation and mindfulness is a daily practice that keeps me in a state of flow. But there are other things you can do as well, such as practicing boundaries, doing work around self-worth. Attorneys, I think we act like we have a lot of confidence, but quite frankly, I think most of us actually suffer from low self-esteem, which is part of why we're always hustling. And so a gratitude journal is huge. Meditation, mindfulness, those are really important. When I'm saying practicing boundaries, that's perhaps, taking time to go to the gym, go for a walk, and not taking your phone with you. It's sitting down, for dinner with your family and not having your phone with you. Learning to basically push back to what is the norm in the legal industry, which is to always be accessible. And that can be really difficult, but I definitely implemented it in my life when I was a lawyer, and it did not adversely impact any of my client relations, my compensation, or my trajectory.
I am smiling so big right now because I am so excited that you said that. I'm constantly telling associates that I mentor how important it is to set boundaries. And they get so stuck in this idea and these stories about what is expected from them.
Right.
And I think what they don't realize is what's expected for them is to preserve their mind and their health so that they can continue to come to work every day. And the firm can't tell you how much, exercise you need or how much, vacation you should be taking. All they can do is put policies in place for you to do that for yourself and for you to ask for what you need. And I think that if you do good work and you make reasonable requests and act like a responsible adult, there's no reason why you can't thrive in a practice and set boundaries. But I would love to know what kind of boundaries you think a junior associate can start setting and when it's the right time and how to do that appropriately.
Yeah, it's tricky, right? It's a lot easier for a partner to set boundaries than a junior attorney because, as an associate, you're trying to please not just one partner, but often many partners, and you want to do well. So I think one approach you can take is to have, it's sometimes it doesn't always exist within your firm, is to have a senior associate that can be your mentor, that can tell you what's real and what's not. It's really no fault of the partners. They're stressed out and anxious, so they're going to take as much as they can get. And they're often angry and frustrated, and so they lash out. Knowing what is real and what is not is super important. So obviously doing really good work, non-negotiable. You have to do really good work. Being available all the time, that generally is not required. And if your partner requires that, that's just a decision you have to make. But generally, if you say, I'm going to the gym and I won't be available, or you just go to the gym and you're not available, if you take care of yourself, there might be words said. To me, the key is always to see what happens in your evaluations and your compensation. If you're lockstep, that it is what it is. But I always, believe that your compensation and your evaluations are truly more of a reflection of where you are in your career than anything that is said on a daily basis. So just a brief example, this is such a hard topic because it is so specific to your situation. But I know many attorneys that don't follow the rules, and everyone complains about them. Management doesn't like it. The other partners don't like it. But if they're doing good work and they're responsible, it doesn't impact them at the end of the day. So the key is, does it bother you if other people don't approve? Mm-hmm. Right? So if you're a people pleaser, that may be really difficult. And you have to be willing to accept that there might be a lot of words said about you behind your back or to your face. And the question is, well, are you okay with that if you know you're doing great work and you are not falling down on anything, right? again, to me, this is just a hard topic to really even give general advice for because it's so specific. And that's why I think if you can find someone within your company or your firm that seems to do a good job of balancing things, go to them and ask for their advice on how they would handle the situation.
I think that is such good advice, and it is really challenging. I think, do you find that consistency helps? Because I think that if you kind of set the boundary of, I go to the gym on Wednesday nights, or I go to the gym during my lunch break, then people can work around it and have a little bit more clarity around when you will and will not be 100% available.
Yeah, I mean, I think that people are going to take as much from you as they can. That's human nature. That's just human nature. So if you're always available, they're going to continue to see you as the person that is always available. If you're the person that is not available during certain times, guess what? They're going to find someone else to reach out to.
Yeah.
And that may create more opportunities for that other person, but it's actually probably not. So yeah, I think if you're in it for the long haul, you really have to focus on self-care. So many junior associates don't set boundaries because they say, well, I want to make partner one day. And yet the number of attorneys that actually stay until partner is really small because people burn out and get frustrated and then leave. So you really have to, if you're going to play the long-term game, really look at all of the different factors that play into it. And self-care is one of them.
I also would think it's interesting that a lot of attorneys who then leave say it's because they looked at the partner's lifestyle and they didn't see a lifestyle that they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And they should kind of reflect and be like, if I think it's this much work to get there, it's obviously not going to change when I become partner. So if you can figure out how to make it work now with your lifestyle, then perhaps when you become partner, you could do it differently. Like, just because the way it's done now doesn't look appealing doesn't mean it has to be that way. I don't know. Do you agree? Or do you think that there is certain parts? I've never been a partner. So I'd be interested in your thoughts about if there is certain parts about being a partner that require it to be kind of this grueling lifestyle.
I 100% agree with what you're saying in that it doesn't have, I think that's what you were saying, is it doesn't have to be that way. The legal industry as a whole suffers from workaholism. And with billable hours and client demands and this negative mindset. And like, it's not just a negative mindset, it's a scarcity mindset.
Oh my gosh. I was literally just thinking that. It's the scarcity mindset. And you see it so much with partners because they'll say things like, well, if we don't do it, someone else will.
Right.
And like, well, maybe we don't want to be the people who do that kind of work. Because
at any given moment, all of these very wealthy law firms think that all of their clients are going to go away. There's not enough money to go around, even though people are making
money hand over fist.
Of money.
Yep.
And so again, it's this negative scarcity, mindset that is not helpful to anyone, which is part of why it's so hard to be in the legal industry and have balance and be happy, because you have to make a decision for yourself that you're going to do your own thing. You're going to take care of yourself, and you're going to basically block out all the noise. Becoming partner does not suddenly create for you new opportunities to set boundaries. You have to make that decision on your own. There are a ton, the vast majority of partners are still working all the time and in this mindset. And so it's not going to just change. You have to make that decision, whether it's while you're an associate or while you're a partner. You have to make that decision. It's a little bit difficult for me to say that you can make that decision at any point along the path, because I didn't make that decision until I was a partner. I did not institute these things. I did not find flow. I did not find the ability to set boundaries and to stop people pleasing until I became a partner. I deeply believe that you can do it at any point. But if I'm being honest, full disclosure is I didn't practice it while I was an associate. So, I can't say that personally worked for me. I don't know. But I would think that you could at any given moment say, I'm going to do this differently. And it is a process, and you will upset a lot of people if you've always been the, rock star that was available 24/7 and never pushed back.
I have done this in my practice. I am an associate, and I definitely put in the work. I think for me, the first couple of years I hustled. I was always available. I was sat at my desk even when I didn't have work. I was that associate.
Right.
And then kind of strategically decided that I wanted to start having my family, and, not many third-year associates just make that decision. And so for me, that was really the first boundary I set, was that I wasn't going to let my career dictate when I would start my family.
Right.
And coming off of that, it became easier. And I know that it's kind of this is a tough conversation, because I do think that there is this weird space that women get once they have kids to be able to use them as an excuse.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't want to downplay, like, if you're single and you're trying to find somebody, the fact that you have a date is just as important, because you are trying to make real connections, and people should respect that just as much as my need to go home because my kid is sick. Like, all of our real lives are important. But for me, it definitely was that transition into motherhood that gave me that space. And my prior firm that I worked at had a great policy that allowed you to go on flex time. And all parents were allowed it, but it was mostly women who took advantage of it. And that just allowed me to kind of set a more flexible schedule and work from home. And it didn't affect my pay in any way or the expectations. It just put a schedule in place so that partners and the firm would know what days I wasn't going to be in the office and things like that.
Right.
And so that was a great compromise, and I think a great program. But then there was always conversations about whether we should even have a program like that. Like, maybe everybody should just be allowed to be responsible adults. And, like,
that's an interesting concept.
And that's, what if, like, after you've been practicing a certain amount of time, proven that you are in it and can do the work, you could just come to a partner and say, hey, I would like to start working from home 2 mornings a week. Or maybe not even have that conversation, just start doing it and being like, hey, this is what's going on. Let me know if there's any issues. And it wouldn't have to be this formal thing for women mothers, or, that kind of sets you aside from everybody else. So I come in with mixed feelings about a program like that, because I do think it's helpful to have that structure, because it gives people permission to do it. But then at the same time, it does put you on a different track, and it raises your hand for you.
Right. Yeah. So I definitely think, I kind of have like the 7 steps to what I think kind of gets you a really, healthy, happy career. And the first one is clarity. And so it depends on, what you truly want. If you want a stimulating, exciting career that may not include partnership or a certain title or a certain amount of money or building a book of business, then I think for that person, it absolutely makes sense to go on a flex time schedule, even if it impacts the track, because they know with confidence what they want, and they're not worried about it's that noise, right? They're not worried about the noise and what the expectations are and what they should be doing. On the other hand, if you very much want to be partner, you want to be equity partner, you want to be in management, then if you are very clear on what you want, your boundaries are probably going to look different, unless there are others in your firm that have proven taking, some more time schedule. If you're confident in what you want, then your boundaries are just going to look different. You're not going to take that flex track. You're going to start doing things that are difficult, but it would be saying no, or, maybe working from home, but you're not telling people, as long as you're getting the work done and you're responsive. To me, the approach that you take 100%, if you want it to work, has to be based on what you desire. And it's your desire, right? Like, not what other people are telling you should be your desire. I think we tend to just check boxes and look at, well, what's next? This is what I'm supposed to achieve next. You got to get clear on what you want and be confident in why you want that. It makes all of your decisions so much easier if you can get clear.
That makes sense. And I think that probably for me was really part of it, was that I kind of came into Big Law knowing that partnership wasn't the goal. And the funny thing now is that I'm still in Big Law, and more people are asking me if that's what's going to happen, because now I'm coming up, I'm in my 6th year. So that conversation is starting. And because I came out of a recession class, I'm the only there's like no class ahead of me. There's no classes for 2 people, like 2 classes below me. There's nobody. And so if I wanted it, I could still have it, and I would have done it my way, which is like shocking to me. I was kind of just like digging my heels in the sand and like bearing down and like hoping it all worked out, and that I wasn't going to regret prioritizing my family. And I wouldn't have regretted it, because it's what I wanted to do. But it's really interesting to me how it's all played out. And I definitely would play out, would play out different for different people. But I'm interested to see where this takes me now.
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting though, right? I mean, when you can start to have success on your own terms, it's so much more satisfying. And I just think that's where so many of us go wrong, myself included. Sometimes we get caught up in what we think is expected of us, and we're going down a path that we don't even really want. So when you know what you want and you basically set out on that path, then whatever happens is just, it's just kind of, gravy, because you're already satisfied because you know what you want and you're accomplishing that. And I just think that a lot of people don't see the options that are available and are too afraid, for many different reasons, to raise their hand and ask to do things differently, or just start doing things differently and seeing what happens.
Agreed. And do you think that affects lawyers more than other people? Because I think it does, but I'm just a lawyer, so maybe I feel bad for us.
So I work with some doctors and accountants as well, and they have very similar pressures.
Okay.
I think part of it is any kind of profession where you're working all of the time and the stakes are high. All three of those have malpractice issues, and there's a lot of money involved. I think it just creates a ton of stress. And then, you've got, especially for women and minorities, trying to make it in these cultures that aren't really supportive or inclusive.
Yeah.
So, I do think it's quite prominent in any profession where you've got those expectations. But, law is what we know, and there's nothing wrong with saying that it is a stressful profession. I think there's plenty of data to confirm that, right? Like depression is higher, suicide is higher, drug and alcohol addiction, that's higher, divorce rates are higher than the general population. I mean, that's proven. So
perhaps there's also a part of it that has to do with working so much so you really align your sense of self and self-worth with the job.
Yeah.
So when things do go wrong, it's harder to just say, oh, that's just work. Because I'm pretty sure that if like a mailman puts a letter in the wrong mailbox, he doesn't feel like he's a bad person for like the rest of the week. But I definitely can remember times when I, as a junior associate, sent an email to the wrong email list and was horrified. Honestly, Googled jobs for lawyers who quit. I don't know why, but I just felt like I had disappointed. It was not a big deal at all. Everyone makes those types of mistakes. And I know some people are much better at letting it roll off their shoulders than I was, but I definitely took every single mistake to heart and made it it reflected me as opposed to my ability to do the job or, my junior status at the firm or any of those things. It was me bad.
Well, right, because it's part of our identity. We see our career as an extension of ourselves. And so it's hard to separate the two. And I'll be honest, I think, again, I don't know if it's nature versus nurture, but I still struggle with that. Now that I have my own business, everything I feel like is a reflection of me. And, every failure I feel like is an extension of me. And I have to remind myself that my business is not me. It's just a business, and I can put my heart and soul into it, but it doesn't change the essence of who I am as a person. And, that's just something that you have to remind yourself of. Otherwise, it's so easy to assume that your work is you and you are your work. And that's not the case. But I think my meditation and mindfulness helps keep me grounded in that regard.
So before we wrap up the show, I have a couple of questions I like to ask everybody.
Okay.
And I would love to start with, what do you believe is the key to living a life you love?
I think it's about authenticity. It's about knowing who you are and what you want and showing up true to yourself every day. So, and that can be hard, especially in the legal field. I'm sure you're familiar with the concept of covering. The stats show that 90% of women and I think 98% of minorities in the law have all covered, which means you show up in a way that's not true to yourself in order to fit in and be accepted. And I don't think that leads to happiness. I think happiness requires you to be true to yourself. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's where happiness comes from, is just honoring who you are each and every day and in every situation. And that's not always easy. It's I think a lifelong practice.
I had never heard those numbers before, but I don't doubt them. And it's interesting that you say that, because I recently started wearing one thing to work every day that I think is slightly inappropriate. And I will take a picture of it and send it to my husband and hashtag come as you are. And it could just be like a pair of earrings or like a lipstick that's a little too bright or a pair of shoes that are just a little too fabulous,
Right.
And it just makes me happy to know that I, even if I can't be 100% myself 100% of the time, I'm in little ways bringing myself to work every day.
Yeah.
So I'd never actually heard those numbers or really haven't done that much reading on that topic. So I'm really interested, and we'll want to dive into that more after this.
Absolutely. It's kind of, when you hear it, it's like, oh yeah, obviously that's always been going on. But the research around it and the conversation around it is fairly new. But there's some good stuff out there on it. I will tell you, white straight men, they also report that at least the younger men covering 50% have covered, which is interesting. So one out of each white man has, but their covering, the majority of their covering shows up in the sense that if they are going to leave to go, maybe home early or to go to a kid's game, and they say, what they say is that they're going to see a client. Mm-hmm. Because they're worried that the older generations will look down on them for
prioritizing family.
Right. So, it's an interesting topic, interesting conversation. And I think the more that we can all show up to work, bringing our own values, culture, to the table, I think it will make the workplace better in general, but it will certainly increase our own satisfaction and happiness.
Along those lines, are there any tools or resources that you would recommend to people who are interested in learning more about this topic or any of the other topics we've talked about today?
I'm trying to think. So LCLD, the Leadership Council on Legal Diversity, it's, I think, lcld.org. They have a lot of great resources and information on their website, probably related to covering and just diversity in general. NAL, which is the National Association of Women Lawyers, they do a report every year, which is really good for female issues and reporting. I'm trying to think if there's anything else out there. Those are the two that come to mind.
Yeah, that's great. And I will include both those links in the show notes so people can access those directly and get more information. So my last question for you today is, what do you believe separates those lawyers who find happiness from those who don't?
So I think as long as you're looking outside of yourself, as long as you're looking to external things to provide you happiness, it's always going to be elusive. I think that we are born full of love and joy and happiness, and it's within us. It's always there. There are just all of these things that keep getting added on, new pressures, and we start to become something we're not in order to please others. And I think the key is really about stripping all of that back and going within. And again, it's just about honoring who you are as opposed to looking outside of yourself to find happiness.
That's so beautiful. And I love that you shared that. Thank you so much, Heather, for coming on today and sharing all of your insight and your knowledge with us. It was so great to chat with you.
Thank you.
Before I let you go, can you tell us what's the best way for people to find you and learn more about what you're doing?
Sure. So my company is The Language of Joy. And so you can go to thelanguageofjoy.com. There's information, resources there. I occasionally do some videos on YouTube, but for the most part, you can get my newsletter. It goes out every other week. You can sign up on my website. And I also do CLEs, mostly in Tennessee, sometimes national retreats. So you can sign up for that list if you want to find out what's going on with either my on-demand CLEs or my women's conferences. I would love to meet new people and connect.
Great. And I will include all of that as well in the show notes. Thank you so much, Heather.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me for the Happy Lawyer Project podcast. Please head over to my website, www.thehappylawyerproject.com, for more information from today's show.
While you're there, I'd love it if you'd leave me your thoughts on the show. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or follow me on Instagram. If you've enjoyed the show, please share it with your friends. And don't forget to head over to iTunes to subscribe and review the show. As you know, each rating helps more listeners find the show and helps me get awesome guests on here for you guys. If there's anyone you'd like me to have on the show, or if you'd like to be on the show, head over to my website and let me know, or send me an email at Okoma, OKEOMA, at thehappylawyerproject.com. A special thanks to everyone who's left a review, sent me an email, or reached out to me in any way. I appreciate you. Thank you again for spending this time with me, and if you would like to learn more about working in your gift and living your passion, head over to the website for a free gift. Until next time, bye!